Oh yes, I've just seen it. I am live with Carol Linden, and we're going to go through Linda Berens' interaction styles. If you want to know more, folks, there's a book. You can see it there. And it gets better. There is another book. It's not the cheapest in the world, but there you go. Interaction Essentials. Another good book. And if you want to go a little bit further, a slightly different system. It's also mentioned a little bit in Personology, and you should only buy this book if you're an INTP. So if you're offended by that statement and you want to prove me wrong, go and buy it as well. But it's a tricky book. Right. So over to Carol.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Ben invited me to give people a little tasting of interaction styles. We're going to do a basic overview of it. Of course, we'll have time to ask questions. I'm going to invite you to consider, we're going to have a discussion at some point about what you think your natural style is and in what situations you may use other styles. And then I'll show you a few situations in which Berens' work is really applicable. I teach like a 6-hour course on this, so we won't do that. But I do want to show you the things we're not doing. And I've got a picture of that book on the slide. I cannot more highly recommend Linda Berens' initial book, Interaction Styles 2.0. I learned about interaction styles in 2007, and I know to say something changed your life sounds trite, but at the very least we can say it changed my professional life, and it certainly enhanced my teaching. I work with clients and I use interaction styles. I always start there now. And the reason I start there is there's nothing intimidating about interaction styles. It's not invasive. And 2, adults get it. Adults look at it and go, oh, wow, that's me, and I do that then, and oh, yeah, I recognize this. And the third reason is, guys, you can walk away from a class on interaction styles and walk out in the real world and use it. And that's not true of everything we learn. So I wanted folks to know that I found this extraordinarily valuable. It actually saved me in a certification program I was in. I was using the wrong style in attempting to facilitate a group. And I went from not being able to do it, and the head guy, literally the CEO of that other company, didn't know why. And he was as frustrated as I was. And I came back from Berens' class on interaction styles, and I knocked it out of the ballpark because I got it. I should have been using Chart the course style, and we'll get there in just a minute. So when I do my public course, I use the phrase natural working styles, and that's a marketing choice. And it also is an indicator to people in my class we're going to focus on working. We'll take all questions here today. There we go. So we're going to look at just a couple of fundamentals. I'm not doing many, but just a couple. Interaction styles. We're going to talk about recognizing them and how to flex your style. And then at the very end, because this is a group that honors multiple models, we're going to look at, I'm going to show you, and you've got it in your handout, how interaction styles, temperament, and psychological type interlay so beautifully with each other. It's not just philosophically beautiful, which I don't know if Ben would say that, but I actually think it's philosophically beautiful how they all do this.
I do as well.
Very good. It's incredibly useful. I do it because it's so useful with clients. So just in a nutshell, why do we do this? And this is my favorite quote. Well, one of my 2 favorite quotes from The World of Type. We don't see the world the way that it is. We see the world the way that we are. We all have lenses, and we see the world the way we are. And that's why it's so illuminating and can be life-changing. Because some people go to their graves never getting it. They think what I'm seeing is the way the world is, and they don't get it for their whole lifetimes, that they have a perspective and other people have a perspective. And once you get that, it makes it so much easier to be effective with other kinds of people. So this is Linda Berens. One of my favorite Linda Berens slides of all time is her model of self, and this is the only piece of fundamentals we're doing. You have a core self, and that's your genetic material. Okay, there's wiring involved here. Interaction styles, I don't know if you've read from the back of her book, if you have her book. Interaction styles is a social style theory, and it comes out of the social styles work from the 1920s. DISC is based on this. Tony Alexander's work is based on this. There are like half a dozen of these. I'll get to that in a minute, but the core self is wiring. And interaction styles, the folks who developed social styles really connected these preferences with our innate wiring. That's not who we are. That's not the total of who we are. We also, a huge part of it is our developed self. And Ben, I don't know if you've had Dario on lately. I know you and I were at a Dario workshop last Friday, but Dario Nardi does fascinating EEG research with type, and he can show you how someone with the same preferences has a basic pattern in the brain, but due to different things they've studied or done with their lives, you literally create different neural pathways based on what you're exposed to and what you spend time learning about. So know that there's a piece of you that's the genetics and what you inherited, and there's a huge part of you that is you because of the life you've led and what you've been exposed to and learned. The last little piece is in different situations. It's appropriate as functional adults that we behave differently in a pub or a church, at a wedding or a funeral. We behave differently, and we're not being inauthentic when we do that. We're just being appropriate. So when I'm teaching these styles, I'm saying I'm not asking you to change any behavior because anybody's wrong. I'm asking you to consider flexing so you can be more effective with other people who are different. So just remember, psychological type has been unfortunately maligned because it was taught, shall I say, unskillfully at times, and people felt put in a box. The sad thing is that could not have been farther from the developers of the Myers-Briggs, Art Jung for that matter.
Yeah.
To put somebody in a box was not what they were out. You're a complex being, and Berens' model of self exemplifies that to me, and I love using this. And I'm going to stop right there and pause and ask for any questions or comments, and then we'll go into the styles.
I'll just say something about Dario, and this is like links, and there's a concept in socionics that he likes, and Linda's working on it as well, and that's what she calls intentional styles, what she used to call before that the cognitive styles, and what we would call the quadras. And the reason I bring this up is that when you showed about Dario and people changing, they tend to change into their sort of opposite type, with the type with the opposite letters. So, and he gave there's a video out there, folks, on YouTube.
Ben, I wouldn't use the verb change. I would say we become more enhanced, and we use more of our non-preferences, and we expand ourselves. It's not, we don't ever, and the reason I say this is people get it confused that their core changes.
Right.
Your core never changes, but you, because your developed self is so huge, you do change, and you grow yourself, and you grow out of that core, and you start using different parts of your personality, and you're a more robust version, I like to say, than you were, say, as a child. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I should have phrased it differently because it gets a little bit tricky with the EEG activity shows an apparent change just in the activity, but what had actually gone on is that somebody had become so good at their top two preferred cognitive processes that the effort wasn't showing up in the EEG readings, but the effort was showing up that they were starting to pay attention towards their tertiary and their inferior functions. And so just looking at it from the point of view of activity, they started to look like their opposite type. So somebody with INFJ preferences and a developed INFJ, when Dario EEG'd them, they showed a lot of activity in sort of SE regions,
and
or SE wholesale.
That's because they were used as a more robust version of themselves. They were now using it. And isn't that cool that his technology can pick up on that? Yeah,
and so what's good about that is that gives you a little bit of, I'll just say that's a little bit of validity for quadras and the intentional styles that Linda's working on, about how people can become a little bit like the other half of that group of four. So that's it. That's all I wanted to mention. Okay,
Emily or Santa's, would you like to ask or say anything? Or any thoughts here? Does this look useful to you?
It's useful for sure. I'm just observing at the moment.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Santa, did you want to say anything before we proceeded?
No, nothing yet.
Okay, very good. So I do want to give full credit to a woman I am very proud to say is my mentor and has been since 2007, Dr. Linda Berens. what I love about how she did this, in the early 90s, she looked at the social styles, Dis, Tony Alexandra's work, the different variations of them, and she thought, why does this not sync with type and temperament? She could see there were some ways they interlaced, but it wasn't a great fit. And so she, leading with introverted thinking, which highly developed introverted thinking, Linda's part, she studied it carefully and thought, oh, I see what's going on here. There are little threads of temperament description left in these social styles descriptions. So she went through and methodically, in a way, as an ENFP, I can only be in awe of, okay? Excuse me, I should not say an ENFP. Someone who has ENFP preferences, I can only admire what Linda did. I understand it and I admire it, but I could never have had the patience to do what she did. It's one of the reasons I admire her. And she teased out the temperament pieces, and voila, there she came up with pure descriptions of social styles. And now all of a sudden, I'll show you at the end, interaction styles, temperament, and your psychological type beautifully overlay and interweave. In fact, when I do the interaction styles class, and then the next day I do the temperament class, your Myers-Briggs type preference is 99% of the time is the intersection of those two. The temperament over one interaction style correlates with one of the 16 types. And I just find that fascinating, that the temperament model that's 2,000 years old. And interestingly enough, social styles and psychological type were both developed in the early 1920s. 90 years ago?
Yeah.
About 90 years ago. And how we've got three styles that beautifully interlace because of Berens' methodology and her patience and her intellectual skill at going through there and seeing what needed to be teased out and what was pure interaction style. Here's the book. Ben held it up. I want you to be able to see it clearly.
Yep.
Page 27 alone is worth the price of this. What is the book, like
Let's have a look at page
$12?
27. Let's have a look.
Yeah. 37, page 37. And that's, yep. We're not going to do it now, Ben. We'll get to that at the end, but I'm just saying.
Oh, yes, that is good.
This book is worth it for that alone. So we're going to look at the fit and be thinking about, as we go through this, what parts of this fit you and what parts don't. And you may be recognizing other people into it. We're actually going to discuss each time what are the positive contributions this style brings to the workplace. And I find that adults with any kind of work experience never fail to do this. They can always see the positive attributes that other styles bring. Now, we're not going to have time to talk about stress. I'm just showing it here because it's part of the teaching and it's wonderfully useful. We're not going to have time to talk about decision making. That's in a longer course, but I want you to know it existed. We're not going to have time to talk about informing or directing language, but that would be in the longer course. I want you to know it exists. Let me finish, Ben. Let me do the last one. Then we'll talk. Whoops. Sorry. I'm trying to move this out of my way so I can see that what's on and flexing. The whole purpose, and that's what page 37 is about. The whole purpose in learning this is to become aware of your own use of the styles, when you use which one. And, we tend to get stuck in our favorite one and don't switch when we should. And I had a very personal situation, a professional situation, which I was not switching when I should. And interaction styles just shone a light on that. So here are the 4 styles. And by the way, these are my icons. I had these developed to make a visually millennial-friendly course that I'm going to be launching on Teachable next month. So, Ben, did you want to say something before I proceed?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Carol. I'll remember your good manners in future and try to match them. I have here. So, yes, in the book, so these bits that we've not got time to look at today, folks, if you get Linda's book, Understanding Yourself and Others, An Introduction to Interaction Styles 2.0, it's got things in there on interaction styles and stress, interaction style, energy and decision-making style, the identifying others thing that Carol referred to, and then a very good bit on perspective shifting on page 39.
If I got the page number, the page where the table is that not 37? Did I have that wrong, Ben?
Well, there's a long, big table like this that's on 39.
Page, well, then I do have the page number wrong. I need to fix that. Ben, you send me a note to remind me to fix that.
Yeah.
Page 39.
That is a great table. It's the one that says the closing, the business of the interaction, and the opening of the interaction. So the communication stages.
Right. And actually, I'm going to get that at the end, Ben. We're just starting here.
Right.
But
okay.
she breaks down an interaction into 7 stages. And then she shows you how each of the 4 styles prefers that those stages transpire. And you really get it how you miss it with some people. And I'll give you a couple of examples, a great one a client of mine had. So these are the 4 styles, and we're going to start with the in charge style. I'm going to go through this quickly. Y'all talk whenever you want to. Raise your hand. I can actually see you all. Raise your hand if you want to say something. I'm just going to present attributes of each style, and then we're going, since there are just 4 of us, have a discussion of what anything you'd like to contribute about how you see that style positively contributes in the workplace. So Berens identifies the drive, aim, and core belief of each one, and it's really important to see how different these are. It's totally understandable how we totally miss it with people sometimes when you realize how differently we are. The drive for the in charge is an urgent need to accomplish something. These people move quickly because there's like this pressure going on in their chest to move this thing forward and not have it stall. They want an achievable result. These are not pie in the sky people. These are people who see what we need to do and head straight for it.
No.
This is very important because we're going to compare some of these later on and see how different they are. It's worth the risk to go ahead and act or decide. That is not my core belief. I have problems with this core belief in a room sometimes at work. But this style, that's their core belief. And here's something that, even if they don't say this out loud, this is their working model inside. I trust we can manage whatever happens.
Yeah, that's fair, yeah.
And that's why they feel confident in moving quickly, because it's better to take an action than not. Stalling things really puts them in pain, and they trust they can manage. I want you to think about that level of confidence. That is a really cool thing. I don't know if you've been around someone who has it, but that level of confidence can be very attractive to a group of people, and it can give a group of people, whether it's in a company or on a team, it can give them the confidence that we can move forward with this person, we're going to succeed. So here, we'll talk about any of these you want to. These are the kinds of things. Now, no one person with this style does all 8 of these, but these are the kinds of activities you might see them engaged in with other people. And I'll pause here for any comments or questions, or if you want to discuss any of these, let me know. Ben?
It's just that our audience is pretty type savvy. So as you introduce each style, if you say, oh, these are these 4 types.
Actually, Ben, I don't want to do that.
Okay, fair enough.
But I have a good reason. And the reason is I want folks to go into this open, unadulterated, and that's why I save it to the end. But
my style is accommodating behind the scenes, so I will accommodate your wish.
Right, yeah, I do this so people will go into it open. And that also helps them be more open to seeing that they use more than one of these. None of us can just use one. We tend to have a preference. That just is what it is. But we also use multiple ones. Anyone want to say anything about any of these?
I don't know.
Emily.
I might just, I can't remember what the other ones were that you're going to go into in a bit, but I'm like this weird
hold on,
mix
there you go.
Of being...
There you go.
It's like, I don't like taking the lead, but I think people realize I'm such a perfectionist. They let me do it, but I end up on my own doing it. Always the lone wolf. That's
literally.
Okay, Emily, I'm so glad you said that out loud. Now hold that thought, because that is very informing. There's a really piece of gold in there, okay? Because when we get to your style, you're going to recognize it. And what a beautiful example. You're recognizing that's not me, but I end up going there. Like you said, they recognize that you're going to get a really good result, so you get put there. So that's very cool. Very cool. Okay, now I'm going to get us back to where we were. These are the talents, the kinds of things you see them doing, and these are attributes. there's a physical aspect to these, and certainly behavioral. There tends to be, I don't know if I can do it sitting down in this chair, but there tends to be a chin up, chin out, kind of chest out, walking quickly down the hallway, kind of physical. These are embodiments, right? These are energies, and we embody this energy. And this is a pushing forward, moving forward energy. Linda has the walks, which I can't do in this arena. I should actually videotape them and show them. Linda taught us the walks, and I was so scared of doing them the first 2 times I taught, but the 3rd time out, I got my courage up and I did the walks. Because to do the walk, you really have to embody that energy. This is not my energy. So let me finish, Ben, and then I'll get you back here, I promise.
Okay.
So I was doing it for the first time in a class. There was a woman on the front row who self-acknowledged was clearly in charge style. She owned it right up. And I said, I confessed, I've never done the walks before. I've been practicing them because you have to embody the energy. How did I do? And the woman on the row said, I think you pretty much nailed it, Carol. Just one thing. The chin needs to jut out just a little more. And I realized I really had nailed it. And ever since then, except for the chin, and ever since then, I make that chin go out when I do this. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I was just saying that you can sometimes notice this, as particularly amongst young men, we're saying in the teenage years, and you'll be able to notice. And I think amongst these in-charge types, there are slight differences. So, for example, I think ESTP is going to go, I'm sorry for mentioning that type, but, you know, they walk like a panther. They're a little bit more fluid than, say, and the ESTJ will be a bit more chest out, like a sergeant major.
Yeah.
And
a bit more up, kind of military bearing.
Yeah. And the ENTJ will try to appear like an ESTP, but not like quite have the same flair in the way they carry themselves, and just the level of force, not so much aggression, you could say capability. Right. They really when they walk, the confidence that comes across, and so different kinds of confidence. And of course, I suppose with the ENFJ, a little bit different kind of, maybe more.
And right, yes. Think Oprah. Think Oprah.
Yes.
Think Martin Luther King. Certainly, he had a presence, but it was not an ESTP in charge presence. ENFJ, there's a certainty and a strength there. I mean, I don't know how Oprah, how big a deal Oprah is in Europe, but over here Oprah's a pretty
she's
big
quite
deal.
big, yeah.
Everybody knows who Oprah is. So I try to use images people know and think about her presence, but there's a that's the gentlest of these 4 presences. ENFJ has a more gracious kind of feeling base. But Ben, we're not going to do the types until later. Remember,
okay, fair enough.
To be open-minded and let's.
Okay. I'll just say this can also vary though by somebody's build and somebody's age, because it might impede their ability. So, for instance, when someone's an older ESTP, they're not going to move in the same way.
Right.
Because their bodies are going to. I think it shows more when people are younger, because their body movements are not impeded by other factors.
I would say it's probably a purer version, just like our type preferences are. We're not pure in sense of good or evil, but I mean pure in sense of you haven't branched out and developed those other parts of yourself yet. So moving forward, and we're not going to do the breakout. There's just 4 of it, but we are going to talk about that. But I invite you to think about. Actually, Emily has already. Thank you. Thought about. I get put in this position sometime. I will tell you the only time I do this, I'm not comfortable with this at all. I will do this when I'm in a room, and a meeting room, and things are clearly out of control. They are just, we're off on bunny trail number 3 at this point, and I've just had it. And when that Linda's taught me, and I get it from this example, this really is an embodiment. And I unconsciously, because remember, I learned this years after I experienced it, I would stiffen my back, I would lean forward on the table, and I would say, wait, time out. Sounds like to me we're a little off track here. I'm thinking we need to go back to such and such. We have not made a decision about so-and-so, and then it looks like we need to go in that direction. What do others think? And frankly, people are usually so relieved that somebody's done something. People cooperate, we move forward together. But I have to force myself into that energy to do it, because this is not my natural style.
I think the particularly clever bit about that is because that bit at the end is almost like a challenge from that style, because you're actually saying, what do you think? And if the person cannot, it's almost like a tacit admission from them, well, I can't really say anything, therefore I'm going to cede my authority to you, and well, you should be in charge anyway because you're leading this place, so we should behave ourselves. But it's a good little tactic there, a good way of framing things.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm Southern polite, Ben. I got Southern polite down from the cradle. So I would like to have a short discussion here before we move on. Just people contribute some things. What do you think in the workplace? What have you seen that this contributes? And Emily, I'd like to say that you, when you step into this, what you contribute is people get it, wow, she's going to get us a good outcome. There's confidence that you give them when you do this.
Yeah, but I end up, it doesn't feel like something that comes naturally. And so I'm not good at telling other people what to do. Yeah. So I end up doing it all on my own. Yeah. I get thanked after normally.
Right. Which makes it even more admirable, dear, that you do it, because you are stretching and doing something uncomfortable for the sake of achieving something from the group.
Yeah.
So you give people confidence that it's really going to get done. People, they set direction, and it's good to have everybody knowing what the direction is we're going is. There's a natural confidence that this style has. It makes people feel safe and like we're at least heading off in a direction. They can create structure and order. They can, some of them are visionary, some of them are more structure and order and logistics, others are more visionary. It's definitely about clarity. It's about clarity, and it's about decisiveness and moving forward. Santa, would you like to say anything here before I move on? I wanted to give you a chance.
Well, I agree with you. I think I do this when I'm with people that really don't want to be in charge, and somebody has to. And I will do it, but it's very draining.
Santa, thank you for saying that. Amen. Whenever we go to do a style that's not ours, it requires additional energy. The more we get to be in our natural style, the more that we are in flow, and the more the day flows, and the less draining it is. And Otto Kroger used to say, my goal is that for you to get to be in your natural self at least 50% of your time at work. He said, because it takes so much extra energy not to be in your preferences. And I'm so much more optimistic than Otto Kroger. I admire him terribly, but I want you to get to be in your natural self 80% of your time at work, because I don't want your time at work to be draining. Now, I see we have Jonathan here, so I'm going to invite Jonathan. Jonathan, would you like to contribute what positive, make a comment about in charge, or what positively you think they contribute in the workplace? I can't see Jonathan's face. Jonathan, I will unmute you if you'd like. Do I have the power to oh, here, I have to press that button.
Oh.
Actually, I'm hitting it.
Yeah, I think he's written something in the chat. If you click on the chat, he's written something that's...
Okay, when I'm doing slides, I can't see the chat. So, Ben, if you would be my second and tell me what he wrote in the chat.
Oh, he's a little... he wrote a little busy right now, but it was a bit of a typo. He put little buddy right now.
He's been a little busy. Okay, I tell you what, we'll wait for Jonathan to speak up later, but I wanted to give him a chance.
Right, okay.
Okay, so let's move on to chart the course. This style, and I'm welcome y'all's input on my logos too. I had the not logo icons. I had these icons created.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, I suggested that to Santa, but I didn't tell you how much it cost.
Oh, yeah, please don't. It's ridiculous. I want you to know that I had 4 different chart the course icons, and I was teaching for a German engineering company. There were 26 people in the room, and all but 3 of them were German engineers. And they unanimously voted for this icon. So I want you to know I have great confidence in this icon because all those engineers loved it. So, and that's very much in the philosophy and the embodiment of type as Linda would teach it. This is about honoring people's preferences. So the person who has those preferences is the expert on those preferences, not the person teaching it. So they got to tell me what represented them best. And their drive, is a pressing need to anticipate. I mean, think about your classic engineer. They're trying to anticipate how this could break and how this could go wrong and what we need to do about it. Their aim is to get a desired result. Think about a computer software engineer working from design specs. Think about an ISO 9000, or I guess maybe it's ISO 2000 by now, whatever the current ISO number is, but to get a desired result. And look at their core belief. It's worth the effort to think ahead to reach the goal. It's worth the effort to think ahead to reach the goal. Think how different that is from, and we're going to get there in a minute, that's so different. And their trust is, they trust in the process to get us there. One of my favorite quotes that I believe just embodies this is, and I'll let y'all finish this for me, if you fail to plan, then you to fail.
I remember that. I remember it as failure to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah.
That's very English. There you go. I want you to know the Americans say those who fail to plan to fail. But actually, I love that. Ben, you're my second. Would you please send me that in email? I love that.
Okay.
I'm going to put that as the across the pond version of that quote. It's one of my favorite. It just embodies.
Yeah, the highfalutin version.
Oh, exactly. Of course. Well, are you kidding? We love BBC stuff over here. We were Downton Abbey freaks over here. So these are the kinds of things you will see them doing in the workplace. Talk about any of these you want to.
I'll just say here, Sana is somebody who is good on that second one. Give guidance.
Mm-hmm. I'll bet. Well, here I think, Sam, I'd have to ask you, but I'm imagining you might really be able to foresee what people's response are, conceptualize an end, figure out what needs doing. I get the sense that you probably do a good many of these.
Depends on the topic, but when it comes to helping people with their emotional, psychological stuff, then I usually know. Figure out what their problem is and where they're going and where they need to go. Very
cool. Great example of that. And think about how helpful that would be to a client and how reassuring, because there's, for someone who goes, oh yeah, I get what this is and I can help this person. Think about that. That's a quieter kind of confidence than in charge, but that's a kind of knowingness that really, really could make a client feel very safe.
Or they just resist all of it and don't want to hear.
Oh yeah, it's scary. I mean, it's scary. And if people aren't ready for it, they're not. Okay, in England, do you have the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink?
Yeah, I'll just say something, because from a slightly different, I've heard it read from that with the in-charge types, that one of the ways they can overcome resistance is that they're so quick to act. They're so preemptive.
Right.
That it's sort of like it's almost as if there's not enough time for the other person to compete with them.
Okay, just to be clear, Ben's going a little back in time here and discussing in charge, not chart the course. Right?
Yes, yeah. I'm going back to, and then comparing it to this one, it's where then Sana then talked about the people resisting. And so maybe with the chart the course people, maybe they sort of encounter people that there's a little bit more competition because the roles sort of correspond more. They sort of intersect. And this is the kind of thing that's in that personology book that's complicated, where he talks about the roles to chart the course. What he says, contending, intersecting. So what you saw there with Sana, where you've got a client that's resistant and she's trying to make the client change. And so you've got that resistance there. Whereas with chart the course, you've got this relationship where the roles interlinked rather than intersect, because they have different roles. One of them is the person who's in charge. Then the other one is the person who is supposed to be their employee or somebody who's under them. So they don't necessarily confront.
Okay, and Ben, she's not trying to make the person change as a therapist. She's trying to help the person get clarity on what they're doing that's not working for them and help them move forward.
Well, yeah. Come on, Sana. What's your point of view on this?
She's right. You can't just change people.
Yeah. I think that's a guy thing going on there, Ben. Okay, let's move into how to recognize, and then we'll talk about what they
Yeah.
I haven't said anything about introversion, extroversion so far, but seriously, you look at this. What do you see here, introversion or extroversion?
Well, to me, I know what I see, but what do the others see?
Yeah.
That's introversion.
Yeah, it's pretty introverted. And the words, the words for in charge were clearly extroverted perspective. You don't have to be introverted or extroverted to do one of these. By virtue of being human, you can probably pull off some version of it. The more we practice it and do it, the better we'll be at it. And we can learn to do these different styles. What I'm trying to get at today is what your natural style is, and then think about when you use these. This, by the way, is the example of what I needed to do when I was trying to do a certification in small group certification in a leadership program, and I wasn't being directive enough. We'll get to my style later. What I needed to do was switch from my natural style to chart the course and then lay out a path so they'd feel safe and they'd know what the roadmap looked like, and they'd be able to know how to proceed forward in a way that would work for them. It saved me, and I passed the certification, and I did it because Linda Berens taught me about chart the course and helped me do this. They're direct people, they're deliberative people, we see all this, what we correlate with introversion, like reserve, quiet. There's an intense, here's a word I want you to look at, there's an intensity about a chart the course, being in chart the course style. The eyes are focused. Their eyes are on a goal, and they know where they're going. Yeah. And so there's a natural intensity. But there's also, at the same time, there's a calmness. But underneath that calmness is like intense eyes that are really focused on where they're going.
Yeah, something we mentioned yesterday is that one of the things that Keirsey, he says that the people who are directive like this, not only do they like directing others, they don't mind it when others direct them. Yeah. Is that true, Carol?
If they feel that person has the authority to be directive toward them. Directive language implies hierarchy, one up, one down. So as long as that other person in the situation feels like, oh yeah, they have the right to give me orders and tell me what to do. But if in their eyes you don't have that authority, that's really getting risky being directive with another adult, because it is a one up, one down language. Berens was very clear about
I think she's right about that. That's something that's not in the Keirsey theory, but I think she's right on that.
Yeah. So if you think about this, I will share, I do this. My first career was in technical documentation, and I did this when I planned projects. I didn't mind doing it. It's actually something kind of cool about sitting down and charting it out and figuring out and doing the times and how long we could spend on each part. But guys, I could not live there. I absolutely would be a pretty unhappy person if I tried to get a 40-hour week job with this.
Carol, is this, because in terms of the two dichotomies, if we're doing, say, expressive reserved and directive informer, technically this is the one that's furthest away from your natural style. Is that how you feel? So another way of putting it is it easier for you to go to in charge, or is it easier for you to go to chart the course?
Now, well, Ben, that's interesting you would say this, because I'll just be candid here. According to Berens' theory, it's most difficult to move diagonally in the 4 quadrants there.
Yeah.
I'm in the lower right quadrant. Chart the course is upper left. Theoretically, it would be harder for me to do chart the course than to move diagonally and do in charge. That's not true for me, and that could be because of my Southern upbringing. Yeah. As a Southern woman, I can imagine that was very far away from the way I was allowed to operate. I don't know. The developed self has a big role. But according to Linda's theory, it's easier to be go side to side or even up down than it is to cross the diagonal. And I respect her theory. That's just not true for me, and it could be adaptive, because almost all the adults in my childhood were chart the course people. So I at least learned how to deal with chart the course as a child. Right. I had to.
The part of the theory is that the reason why she says diagonally is that those that are, here's a British word, adjacent to yours, they'll have one thing in common. Either So,
Ben, I hate to interrupt you, but we really are going to get there. But at the end, when we do
right,
the
okay.
chart that shows everything,
Over to you then.
You know this, so you're getting ahead.
Right, I'm sorry.
But yes, we are going to, and I think it'll be easier for Emily and Sam and Jonathan if they can see the chart that goes with it. Because
Okay.
So first, I'd like to give y'all a chance. What do you see, chart the course, what do you see that contributing positively in the workplace?
Well, I mean, people know what they're doing. Things get planned out.
That's right. It's directive and planned out. It gives people clarity. It's good about clarity.
And it's also, there's also different kinds of roles. I won't mention the types. I'll just say that there's those people that can do the long range planning, and then there's those people that can make sure that the other people are following the plan as it goes along. So
and I would let's see, in I'd have to go over to temperament in that regard, and one of these folks would be the more visionary. Actually, two of these come from the visionary end of the spectrum, whereas if you come from the sensing end of the spectrum and do chart the course, logistics might be your cup of tea, and you might. So right, there are 4 types that fit in here. So Ben's absolutely right. There are I think of it as 4 flavors of chart the course, and each one implements it differently. What we're trying to do with these patterns is show what's in common. So thank you. Anything else, Santa or Emily? What do you see as this style? First of all, does this look like a real thing to you, and do you see it? How do you see it positively contributing in work?
It's more. I know that I need very clear guidelines. If someone wants me to do something, I need it spelled out.
Right.
Or I just feel lost. I don't know what they want me to do clearly.
Very good. Yeah, clarity is a beautiful gift of this style. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's more something I need from someone else. Me, I'm not so good at setting those goals.
Yeah.
Santa, would you like to say anything before we move on?
I actually don't think I ever really used this style in my previous jobs.
Okay.
Which could have been a problem, honestly, because it does seem to come to me naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose I was never in a position like that.
That makes total sense. And I'm not going to impose on Jonathan. I'm going to take a peek down there. He's still muted, so we're going to leave Jonathan be.
Okay.
So yes, this style contributes clarity, and it's a less in-your-face style than in charge can be. Not that everyone doing in charge is in your face, but there is a high-end version of in charge that can come across to other styles as being in your face. I want to be very clear about that. It's not that they're intentionally being in your face. It can be overwhelming to the other styles, the in charge. Go ahead, Ben, and then we'll move.
In terms of the workplace, and because Keirsey and personology, you went way more towards human resources. What happened, you made this thing about the abstract types, the intuitive types tend to be thinking more about remote things. They have that strategic vision.
Right.
So the NFs and the NTs, they're going to look for things far off.
Absolutely. And so chart, of course, comes in multiple flavors, and one is in the present or logistical, and the other 2 are more visionary. Oh, didn't mean to leave that picture there. So I do want to just tip my hat here to the fact that it's not our imagination that things really can be at cross purposes in a room. I try to, when I teach, explain to people, nobody has to be doing anything wrong for everybody else to be upset about it and flummoxed. It's just enough how different we naturally are that can cause, I know, that's what that picture was about. This is how you can feel in a room when all these natural differences are coming into play. And we can get very judgmental and be kind of blaming, and I like to plant the seed that nobody has to be doing anything wrong for us all to be this unhappy. As you can see by these people's faces, they are not happy with what's going on.
If I was there, though, I'd say, why are you looking at me like that for? That acting's terrible. But I get what they're trying to get across.
That's right. So in charge, for example, it's worth the risk, and let's compare this. For in charge, it's worth the risk to go ahead and act or decide. That what they can't stand is lack of movement. That makes them nervous. And if you show up and you are talking about how this thing you're working on is stalled, or it looks like you're muddling around, OMG, you are inviting these people to reduce their own internal pressure. You are inviting them to take over. Without knowing it, you're inviting them because they can't stand things feeling stopped. Now, compare that. Yeah.
I can just give you an example of a place in the world that needs an in-charge person. That is the fact that they've been building one aircraft in India since 1983. They need to be chivied along.
So, yes, yes, I'm not going to talk about that, but yes,
yes, they do.
Something that goes on too long is good. Somebody has laid something down. Yep. So chart the course. I want you to compare this. It's worth the effort to think ahead and reach the goal. Now, can you imagine these two perspectives in a room and what they think about each other and how they can, step on each other's toes and be at odd ends?
Yeah, I mean, they're both enterprising. They're both going towards a goal.
That's right.
But it's like one's a perfectionist and the other one is a get it done.
Now, what Berens would say about perfectionism is perfectionism is actually a pathology. So we're not going to use that here. That said, the chart the course person is the person probably looking at the details because they've got it all laid out and mapped out. Whereas the in-charge person is looking at it from a perspective usually a little farther away from the details. But we're not going to accuse all folks with chart the course preferences of being perfectionists, but I get your drift there.
Yeah.
And then think about trust. The in-charge person says, well, I trust we can manage whatever happens. Let's go ahead and decide. And the chart the course person says, I trust the process to get us there. If we just plan the work and work the plan. Do y'all use that phrase, plan the work and work the plan?
No, that's new to me. Okay, I'll put that in my locker.
I love it. Chart the course. I love that. We plan the work and work the plan, and that's going to get us there. So think how in a room, nobody being wrong, just these natural differences can really have folks at loggerhead about how to proceed. So going to the third style, this is get things going, and the drive is an urgent need to involve folks. Hear how different that is. We're going to at the end compare how these things are all different for each of the styles, and in fact that's in your handout. I thought that'd be useful. The aim, they want an achievable result. With these people they've got here, they want to do what we can achieve. And the belief, it's worth the energy to involve everyone and get them to want to. Hear how different that is from it's worth the risk to go ahead and act or decide, and it's worth the effort to plan ahead. It's not that these people aren't planful and don't get things done. Their focus is on getting others engaged because they truly believe that if we get people bought in and supporting this, then we have a better chance of succeeding than if we fail to focus on how that people are on board and ready and willing to contribute to the effort. It's just a difference on focus. All these types are trying to get something done. They're just using a different methodology because they have a different focus. And a saying here might be, I trust whatever happens in the interaction will move us forward. Can you imagine how that could drive chart the course perspective crazy or in charge crazy?
I feel like go into this quite a bit, this get things going, in order to like get these hangouts going and like move people along and get them enthusiastic.
That's right, exactly.
For them. But it's a little bit outside of my natural, it's like I have to get a little bit more energy and push the boat out a little bit more, be a little bit more extroverted in quotation marks in order to do this.
Oh, Ben, no quotation marks are needed there, dear. You said that beautifully. And did you hear that natural expression he had of, it's not my natural one. I have to raise my energy and put it out there. Absolutely. This is an extroverted style, get things going, and it's not Ben's natural style, but he can do it because remember, we're human beings. We can do multiple styles. But hear his acknowledgement, not my natural one, but I can do it. But he's aware that he's having to pull up his energy, and that's perfect. I could. Ben, please tell them I didn't pay you to say that, right?
Okay.
Because that was just
No,
too
we're just on
perfect.
the same page.
That's right. That was just too perfect, dear. Beautiful example. And these are the kinds of things you see them doing in the workplace. Oh, facilitators of the world, okay, and brainstormers. Oh, all about brainstorming, which can drive others nuts. I had to be taught, and I respect this very much, that brainstorming is it's a minority of people who think brainstorming is a great idea, and the rest are going, oh my God, you're driving me nuts. Will you please stop that? So
Yeah, that word is.
I've learned to fence in and manage brainstorming. I'm sorry, who
Yeah,
spoke?
I was just
Ben?
saying the word brainstorming tends to have sort of two meanings to me. It's either like one person looking at a piece of paper and writing everything down and they can think of it on it, or it's people round a table chucking ideas out. So,
Absolutely. And this is the second one, because remember, this is an extroverted style. So yeah,
right.
this is thinking about, but you're right, one person could sit down alone and brainstorm with a pen and paper. This is really talking about getting a group of people to do it. This is a this person can be a catalyst in a group, and they tend to be the natural connectors. They tend to be the ones who reach out and get people to connect across barriers. It's They tend to see things in new ways. They want to make things easy for people because they want people to be bought in, because their real belief is we need to get people on board to succeed. I'd like to ask you folks this. As somebody who was in corporate America for 26 years, I have no idea how many times I saw this. I lost track of count. But I have seen things fail, major efforts fail, because they did not take into account who was on board and who wasn't.
Mm.
And they were doing things that were actually going to be to the detriment of one of the working groups. And it's not that people intentionally sabotaged it, but if you've got something going on that you haven't taken the time to make sure people are bought into, you're from my perspective, this is my preference, by the way, from my perspective, you're kind of asking it to fail if you're not taking into account how this is impacting all the different work groups. So others, how does this look familiar to you? Have you seen this?
If I've heard people talking about getting something started and they're not doing it, I will step up and do that. But again, it's not a natural thing that I want to do. But if I want to see something happen, I'm going to step into that role.
There you go.
So yeah.
Good. Well, good awareness, Emily. Very good awareness. Okay, so how to recognize and what? Excuse me. What are we seeing? Introversion or extroversion here?
I'll just say one thing that before I get things going extrovert, I'll just say one thing about one of the things that is, we've got these different interaction styles within the same temperament. So you can have somebody who
Ben, we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, I'm not going to say what the types are,
are.
but you can sort of like move to different ones within it. There's sort of like the skills that sort of correlate with the types. But some of them are further away than others. And we'll get there towards the end, as you said.
That's
so, right. I mean, energetic, animated, expressive, enthusiastic, engaging, gregarious, persuasive. That means, therefore, I must be an extrovert. No. I'm just like this in these situations.
Absolutely. We can, as human beings, we can adapt. And you, Ben, you gave a beautiful example. When you do this for the sake of the group, to get people engaged and active in the group, you feel your energy rise up, because this is an extroverted expression. Get things going is an extroverted mode, and you beautifully express, you feel that happening for you when you do that. So if folks, what do you think this style positively contributes, or what have you witnessed it positively contributing in the workplace? Emily's laughing.
Because I mainly work alone. So
That's right.
I'm trying to think back to times when I might have done this, but
this is a person, Emily, who wants everyone to be bought in, and will touch base with people one-on-one, and they'll act a certain way in a group setting, trying to be, even if it's unconscious, because a lot of people are unconscious of which style they use, frankly. But their underlying belief is it will really help us succeed if everybody's bought in and wants to. This is the kind of energy that is engaging. and is inviting others to come out and engage and participate and join together. That's the main contribution this get things going style does.
And doing it in a situation where you're not got the benefit of being in a superior role, and so you can get things done without being too pushy. Because there's lots of people who do not appreciate the in-charge style.
That's right. And we will get to that when we talk about communication. This is not a directing style. I'll go ahead and say it now. The two we've covered, in charge and chart the course, are directing in their language, and that's a kind of one up, one down way of talking to someone. And this is this is the first informing style we've hit here. This person tends to use informing language, and like Emily, I share with you, I had to actually learn how to tell other people what to do, because I'm so informed. There's a style between directing and informing, and I'm so far out on the informing end naturally that I have to talk about, similar situation with Ben talking about energy. I have to feel myself have to raise that energy and get stronger and more directive. It takes effort on my part to get directive.
I also think that that when you're dealing with creative people, they don't like being directed.
Yeah.
So this style is more, these informing style is more, it's more conducive to creative types because they're self-directed.
Yeah.
The whole point is to be inviting. Go ahead, Emily.
No, I agree with that. Like if it's a plan that I can get behind, like, then I'm going to be the one that's going to try and make it actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or get everyone rallied together at least.
Good.
I might not be able to finish it, but I can try and get everyone together to do that. But if someone came to me and was trying to do it and I wasn't fully behind their idea, or I just was skeptical about it, then yeah, I can see that that's where that plan might fail, because I don't know, because I like doing it myself.
Well, and you're nail on the head. If people aren't engaged in behind it, like I said, it's not that they intentionally sabotage it. It's just not going to occur to them naturally to do the kinds of things that need to be done. Think about it. If you're really committed and engaged, you're going to be looking for things to do to help make it successful, and that's just not going to happen if you're not really engaged. Santa, would you like to contribute before I move on to the next one? You want to contribute anything here?
I think this is by far the hardest for me. I really don't like to do whatever this stuff is, and I also don't like it done to me.
Yeah. It can feel, Ben, just let me address that, and you can go. And I can hear that this is my style, but I can hear this, Santa. It's a very extroverted style I've got, and I have to learn, especially when I'm working with computer engineers and engineers in general. This can feel, it's not my intention, but it can actually feel invasive. This is, it upsets me to think about it, but I have to be honest about this. This can feel in your face to some people who are more introverted and want, some more distance from something. I can see that get things going is not as always as well received as the person trying to do it is intending, which is, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's helpful.
It can be very, very annoying.
Yeah, well, and it can be because it feels invasive, because frankly, their extroverted energy is trying to draw you out. And frankly,
and you
that
don't
can
want
be.
to.
Yeah, if you don't. Exactly. Well said. Thank you, Ben.
I think it's good. So your southern upbringing is a benefit in that regard, in that it sort of tempers it a little bit to get things going. Where like within the manners, I'm going to be enthusiastic like this, within these bounds of like not being too much. But I was just saying there about Sanna, the impact of culture. Sanna lives in Finland, which is a little bit less. So is it fair to say, Sanna, that Finland is not really a get things going culture?
Oh, there's plenty of things that get done. It's just not the extroverted, enthusiastic style. We just do things.
And Santa, thank you for adding that. That's beautifully said. Please tell them I didn't pay you to say that too. That is beautifully said. You don't have to get things going to get things done. You don't have to have all this engaging extroverted energy. You can chart the course, can get things done. In charge, can get things done. You don't need this energy to get things done.
Oh, one thing that might go in with a little bit of Enneagram is that a lot of people of this style, it's like, hey, let's do this thing, it's fun. Right, and they will point out the fun aspects, the enjoyable aspects of this thing. So a lot of the things that we're trying to get done are not things, a lot of the things that we're trying to get going are not things that people would look at otherwise and say, you did the achievement. We achieved the fun. We got the fun going.
Well, Ben, think about it. I was leading documentation themes for computer software manuals. That's not exactly sometimes the funnest thing you could be thinking to be doing.
I can imagine.
But in interacting in a room, I could make that part fun. I could make people feel welcome and be engaging and be very appreciative. A natural thing that can go with get things going is an appreciative energy. And I could be appreciative toward them. And that makes people feel welcome and engaged. But like Santa said, absolutely, amen. And I had to learn that when I'm working with engineers and whatnot. Ben, you said my Southern upbringing does help with a certain level of politeness. But I can be overly expressive and overly enthusiastic for other people's comfort at times. And knowing this material helps me know this. There are times I intentionally reel in my extroversion and my expressiveness and my enthusiasm based on the group I'm working with, because it's not helping their learning if I'm overwhelming them with my energy and there's a big distance between mine and theirs. That's not helping. So I try to teach, but this is not about anybody being wrong. This is about acknowledging and honoring differences and flexing your style so that you can be more effective and help. Like as a teacher, for example, I'm trying to help people with learning. And boy, think about it. It's not helping. If I'm making them go like this, I'm not helping their learning. So I need to flex that. And did you want to say something before I move on?
Yeah, it's just that there's another aspect in that your accent helps in this, because people who don't pick up the get things going will just think, oh, she's just a Southern expressive person. Whereas if you didn't have the accent you had, they wouldn't realize that the energy is coming from like a Jungian type pattern thing. Right. They would just think, why is this person expressive? What's going on with them? Whereas when they hear the Southern accent, they think, oh, it must be a Southern thing. So because that expressiveness is part of that. So it's like they can put it down to a different category. And it becomes normal. It's like if you hear someone with an Italian accent and they're expressive all over the place, then it's like, oh, they're just Italian.
That's exactly right. Very good. Well said. Okay, and I've got a great story I'll tell in another session about an Italian salesperson and her manager and how overwhelmed he was. We'll tell that in another session. Last one. Let's do behind the scenes, and there's not that much more. The last style. So the drive here is a pressing need to integrate. This is a person, and I tried to show that with a little icon that they're using. There's books there. There's their smartphone. Well, the cup of coffee is absolutely essential if you're going to do all this work integrating. And then papers. I think those are supposed to be papers on the edge. And they're at a computer. And this style, excuse me, I shouldn't say person. This style naturally just finds it very natural to want to get information from multiple sources, because their goal is to get the best result possible. So this is a person who has the patience to investigate multiple things. They'll go talk to different people. They'll use the internet. They'll use a book. They'll go to an expert in the field. This is someone who feels a need to get multiple sources of input to get the best result. And the core belief is it is worth the time to reconcile and integrate many inputs and hear how different. See how different that is from in charge. It's worth the risk to go ahead and act. And this is, it's worth the time to reconcile and integrate many inputs. So we get, and this person, Ben, like Linda likes to reserve the word perfectionism for a pathology. This person, but in the healthy end of perfectionism, this is someone naturally in this style really does want the best result, and they've got the patience to reconcile multiple things to get it. And here's something, if they don't say out loud, they believe. I trust we can make it all work out in the end. So one thing I want to not to forget to say about this style is it's an organic process that happens inside them. And they do not feel in control of when it gels. They're investigating and mulling, and then voila, it has gelled, and they go, that's it. I'm there now. I've got it. And yet they can't force that moment to happen. And the worst thing you can do to this person, if you work with this person, is to try to hurry them or press them for something before it's gelled and before it's cooked is the expression we have in America. The worst thing you can do, because everything comes just boom, grinding halt, just boom, right in the face. It's devastating to this style, because not because they're tender, gentle flower or anything. It's because their process can't work under that. Their process is organic and it needs time to work, and they're waiting for the gel to happen too. They're not sitting on a log waiting. They're working to help it gel. It just doesn't seem to be under conscious control. It's an organic thing, and it gels, and you just know it when you're there. So Ben,
yes,
knowing you like I do, how does this strike you, this description here?
Well, when I looked at this description, I was thinking I didn't want to name the type. I was just going to say this is particularly fitting the type of me and Linda Berens. It's like very much of that type. And I'm thinking, how
and
does
David, and David too, David Keirsey.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and especially his son, because talk about integrating everything. He wants to integrate all the knowledge that there is in the world into an Uber theory.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
and he better hurry up. He better hurry up soon. He's probably only got about 15 years left, so he better hurry up with that. But yeah, I'm wondering how and we'll get on that more towards the end. I'm wondering about how the other types in that style.
You're right. When we get there,
things.
I'll be happy to talk about that when we get there. Look at the kinds of things these folks do. The one thing I'd like to say about the workplace, which is unfair actually, often the behind-the-scenes style is someone who gets underappreciated and unrecognized for all they contribute, because they go about it in such a quiet, unassuming way. We've actually got data on these the types that are in here in this style, primary style. And yeah, it's true. They get paid less and promoted less and acknowledged less. And I was saying this one day at Wake Technical College, I'm teaching in the adult ed program, and I looked up, and there was a baby boomer, a midlife laid off person during the great bloodbath of 2008. It's probably 2010 I met her. And I was saying this about this person being underappreciated and unrecognized for all they contributed because they're so unassuming. And she was in the middle of the back row, and there were silent tears streaming down her face. And I, of course, did not draw attention to that, but I thought, it's really moving. It's really touching it's like I was holding up a mirror and she felt seen and she felt appreciated and acknowledged. And it can really be moving to people to feel seen for who they are and to feel appreciated, and just silent tears running down her face. I imagine she had been unappreciated and unrewarded for many years. Other thing I like to say about this type is they often it correlates with very good listening. These types are naturally, and I do want to mention the eyes. Whereas the chart the course person has focused eyes because they got a mission, they're on a path, they're focused on the goal. This is a style that's primarily focused on taking in and incorporating, and they're looking around for how things are connected and taking information in. So there's a kind of openness and a softness to their eyes. Chart the Course has a more intense eye look. Behind the scenes, natural energy is more open, and they're taking things in. And I had a friend who was this way. He was an analytical person on a software team, and he actually didn't want people coming in his office and discussing their problems. But they would show up at his door and say, "Do you have a minute?" And they'd close the door and they'd pour out their hearts about what was going on. And I just had to laugh when he was telling me this. Well, not in his face, I didn't laugh. But bless his heart, as we say in the South, he was a quiet, non-judgmental open-minded person, and he was a good listener. And he didn't want to know all these personal details about these people. He certainly would never have hung a sign on the door, please come talk to me and tell me your intimate details. But he was such a good listener and so non-judgmental. I could see why they chose to do that. And that happens a lot to the behind-the-scenes person on a team, is people come in and tell them things.
I think a good example here is that story you told about when Linda Berens was training as a counselor or a
therapist,
therapist, and she was in this role, and you were saying that it was hard, even though she's of this style, right? That maybe the listening for her was hard.
Actually, I'll pick up the story here. At first, it wasn't. When she was first a therapist, it was fascinating, but over time, she got to be able to get to the core of the issue faster and faster. And then she had to wait for the client to catch up. Because, Sandy, you can't just tell somebody, right? You have to lead and guide and help the client get there. You can't just, well, this is what you need to do. Blah. She said she actually quit counseling and went into training and consulting because it just got boring. She was figuring it out pretty fast after a few years, and she just couldn't. She just lost patience listening while they tried to find their way there. So it wasn't. She wasn't a bad listener is a strong term. She was actually a natural listener at first. It just got to the point. Think about it. Now I'm going to have to talk temperament. She's the theorist version of this.
Yeah.
So she will be open about listening, but she's also a theorist, and it was part of what brought her to therapy it was fascinating. It's very interesting. Well, once she was able to get to the problem so much faster than the client, it wasn't fascinating anymore, and she needed to move on to do something that engaged her.
So it's like the problem is fascinating, but the person not so much, because it's like the priorities of the NTs.
Right, there you go. Let's figure that.
What you said there about, I think what Sana would do is once she'd figured out the problem, she just then would tell the client what they think they should do. I don't think she would wait. We can bring Sana here. Is that your process, Sana? Would you sit around waiting, or would you tell them what to do? Or suggest?
It's very situational. If I feel like they can take it
right.
and it's going to be useful, I will tell them.
Right.
But otherwise, I won't.
Beautifully said. Absolutely. And look at the words. Often this is what you'll see or experience if you're around someone who has this as their natural style. This is an introverted style. If someone has this as their natural style, more likely than not, they are naturally introverted by nature. And they're consultative. They really do want and have the patience to go look. In different sources to create something that, think about Linda Berens gathering up all those different expressions of social styles and having the patience to go through all of them and see the details and see where the gold was for her, and seeing that there were temperament threads left, and when she pulled those threads out, she had a pure expression. I do want to say about friendly, the get things going is the friendly person too, but this is like the quieter, gentler, introverted version of friendly. There's an openness here, but it's not the loud friendliness that you might get, say, oh, I don't know, Ben, and someone like me. Okay, so if y'all would, what, by the way, and I'm open to folks, well, actually, we're going to talk about that in the next slides about when you use what style, but if anyone would like to contribute, what does this style positively contribute in the workplace? Because like the other three, it really does make positive, solid contributions.
I think it provides the ideas for somebody else to take credit for.
You know what? It's because they're unassuming and not assertive. So absolutely, somebody more assertive could take credit. There's a lot of patience in this style, and talk about getting the details right. These are the people who help see things don't fall between the cracks for the team. They're like glue behind the scenes. I think of get things going as the extroverted glue between people out here, and behind the scenes is the supportive glue that's like connecting the team from beneath it and supporting it, doing the kinds of things that help the team be successful, but in a very quiet, unassuming way. Ben?
I think that when it says contribute to the workplace, I think it depends on the work. So, for example, if you're in, say, you know this from being in the software world, but if you're in the engineering and design world, this is pretty much your lead person might be or those near the top in terms of are going to be your designers. And a lot of designers are going to be, you know, I won't mention the type, but they are going to be of this, they're going to be the NT of this style. Because it's like getting that configuration right, getting this integrated design, getting the design right, and then passing it on to somebody else to implement it and bring it through.
And that's right. That's the architect, and actually, that's a Keirsey word for one of the 4 types in this group. Absolutely.
Yeah. He also then later called it the designer, but it's not necessarily, the person is not necessarily a designer. It's just that that's just their intelligent role that they're good at enacting in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. And
because,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just saying there's a little bit of a difference there between someone's role, someone's intelligent role, that occurs within a certain social field, because a lot of these things that people contribute, it's within a certain society where they're able to do these things and express themselves in these ways with these intelligent actions, these sort of like things that are useful in a career.
Mm-hmm. I know. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was about, it was just a sound issue there. I have finished.
Okay. I know the psychological types here. We're going to get to that in a few minutes, I promise. And one of these in particular tends to be, you find in software engineers and research scientists, and another one of them you tend to find in artists and people doing artistic things. You also, it's interesting to me, there's one of these, two of them actually, a lot of research scientists. And think about all these words back here. Think about how well this would go for someone doing research. Everything from research scientists to people who are support staff and artists, you will find in this group naturally. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the different types at the end. You turned it around, Ben. Yeah,
it's because I thought at the moment you've got by yourself and in a breakout on screen, and I thought you wanted to go back and show those words. But
I did. I came back. Maybe I came back too quickly.
Yeah, okay, so that's all fine. Anyway, we got the sequence right. Over to you.
Okay, very good. Yeah, if we had 16 people here, we would definitely have this little discussion with 4 of us. Well, 5.
Yeah, we'd have
4
to break
of us
it up.
with Jonathan listening.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm just teasing, Jonathan. I like that.
Yep.
So, yes, if there were 16 of us, that's why this is left in here. We would have had breakout rooms, but I felt like as small a group we are, we could talk. So, anybody else want to say anything? You're grinning. I see Emily grinning. I love having this visual here.
Well, no, I think this is probably all of us.
Oh no, dear, this is not me. I do not.
No, not you. The rest of us. The rest of us, for sure.
I think Ben has admitted to this, and it sounds like to me you're saying, "Boy, I see some of myself in this."
Definitely.
There you go. There you go.
But it also helps that the way this particular interaction style is defined is very much like, it does match the other ones in the other temperaments, but it does particularly match the one that's of the same temperament as Linda and I.
Yeah, we're about to get there, and absolutely, your type and Linda's and David Keirsey's are all in this style, actually.
Yeah.
Among 3 others, it all in this style. So this is, there we go. I don't know why that was timed that way. So let's have a little, by the way, I checked the time. We're doing great.
Excellent.
And let's have a discussion about which style you use when. Because we probably, and if you want to, self-identify what you think is probably your natural style or in most of the time. And for example, I want to share a couple of common patterns with you when I teach this. Is very often someone picks out, well, there's one style that's clearly me. And I'm that way, for example. Get things going is clearly my style. On the other hand, another common pattern is somebody say, oh, I straddle that world there. I'm part that and I'm part that. Don't make me choose. By the way, as a practitioner, I never make an adult choose. Adult tells me they've got a foot in both worlds. I absolutely believe them. And what I find fascinating is, if this is a client I also do the Myers-Briggs instrument with the letter that they're in the slight preference range with, always, like 99.9% of the time, correlates exactly with what they're saying. I feel like I've got a foot in this world and a foot in this world. Well, if they do have a slight preference on one of the 4 poles,
Right.
yeah. And it's like they're just interaction styles and type are just both supporting and uplifting each other. They just both work so well together that way. So I'd like to share this and then invite you in whatever way you'd like to share my natural style. I'm so get things going. I'm like in the Great Dictionary in the Sky, okay? I mean, I am just the classic get things going. However, that's not, thank goodness. Now, when I was younger, I tried to use it for everything. Let me tell you, that does not work well. Just from personal experience, using your favorite style for everything doesn't work. When I'm leading teams, by the way, it worked extremely well. People felt engaged and they felt appreciated, and that worked very well for me in leading teams.
Especially when they're not subordinates, when the people are like on the same level, then I think that's going to work well.
Ben, that's well said. It also works with subordinates, although there were times where you do have to get directive, and then we'll talk about where I went then. But yes, it works with everyone. But there are times if you've got subordinates, you have to know when to get directive and you need to get out of get things going. But absolutely, the guy was a guy in tech support who corresponded to my role in the documentation department, and he and I just got along like a house of fire. And I found out later he and I were both get things going types, so it was natural. We both got along great. Now, when I'm managing a project, what Linda Berens taught me is, and I recognize it, oh wow, that's what I do when I project manage. And there are people who do that 40 hours a week, and you'd have to come visit me in the psychiatric ward if I tried to do that 40 hours a week. It would drive me nuts because I would feel so stifled. But it's you don't have to be a chart the course style to be a project manager, but I really believe you have to be able to do those behaviors in order to successfully manage a project. You don't have to live there. And when I'm coaching clients, guys, all this extroversion I've got, and Santa, think about being in a room one-on-one with somebody. Coaching is not therapy, but it's a step removed. I mean, think about it. All this energy, that would be quite inappropriate in a room with a client. I need to pull back in and be quieter. I need to go into listening mode. So I realize that I go into behind the scenes mode when I do coaching. It's very rewarding. I enjoy it. But again, I could not do that 40 hours a week. It would just be so stressful. Reining all this energy in 40 hours a week would be exhausting, frankly. The biggest stretch, now I want you to know I'm counter to Berens' theory here. The biggest stretch for me is not chart the course. And I want to go to think about that core self, develop self model we used earlier. And I think that's because my childhood was full of chart the course people, so I got trained in it. It's why I think. So the in charge can be the biggest stress for me and stretch for me to do, and that can be the most stressful for me to deal with. I can figure out my way pretty easily with the other 3 styles. But if someone's coming on really strong, that can really, as extroverted as I am, because I'm so on the informing instead of directing in, it's like, Santa, I know what you're talking about when you just feel like get things going is coming in on you. I can just feel sometimes in charge energy feels like it's just invading my space and makes me pull back.
I think what is coming in, I think I mentioned this before, is that the way you've been taught with the Southern manners, and that in charge style is so directive and pushy.
Right.
Like
directive. I'm not going to say pushy. It can't.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like it's the kind of things that it's almost like the things that you've been told in Southern manners.
Right.
Are like it's almost opposite from the in charge style. It's like don't push, don't and that's probably what is making you a little bit further away from it.
Well said. And think about it. All of that's in my developed self. That is very well. So I've got a blank page here, and I put this in your handout, I believe. I hope I did. I intended to have you a place. So anyone who would like to contribute, what do you think your natural style is, and anything like you'd like to discuss, any of these questions. And do you use multiple ones of these style, and what do you use it for? I'll be quiet and let people mull.
I can see myself using all 4, but my natural style would be what's the last one? I forgot what it was now.
Behind the scenes.
behind the scenes is that would be my natural style.
Okay.
But it's weird. I almost end up being the total opposite of that in my way of being a lone wolf. So I'll be with people and I'll be like, why are you doing it like that? And I'll end up really bossy, and I don't mean to. And it's not a good way to lead a team, because they just end up letting you do everything.
Which can be another way to exhaust yourself, by the way.
Which
well
which
think about it,
happens.
as behind the scenes, you really do want it done well.
Yeah.
That's part of your core, right? Your core.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want it done well, and you have the patience to do it well, and think about it. You don't naturally do that more extroverted thing. So one of the things Beren has taught me is that when we go outside our natural style, we really need to practice that, because it's not our natural thing. And we can do it, shall we say, slightly less elegantly than the people who do that style naturally. And we don't mean for that to be the case, but it's just because we're less mature in our usage of it. Go ahead, Emily.
I was thinking maybe it's because I've not, I thought I was good at it, but I wasn't so good at it. I don't think I'm so good at the get it going.
Get things going, the extrovert, draw people in, right.
I think my interpersonal skills with actually getting people going, it's not quite there as I thought it was. Right. And so I jump from my behind the scenes to being the leader, and I can't seem to bring everyone with me. So I'm on my own.
Well, dear heart, very, very good awareness. Very good awareness. Good for you. Good for you.
There is this thing in the Berens book that the people might want to look at. It's like, I think it's like those which are the process types and those which are the result types. And I think the in-charge ones and the behind-the-scenes ones are the ones focused on the result, and then the other ones focused on the process. So either the collaborative process and get things going, or the more of the the process in terms of chart the course.
Well said. And I had to be taught to see that. I'm so process oriented. I didn't know I was process oriented. It's like the water, the fish swimming in the water, or the bird in the air. They're unaware of the air or the water. Yeah. I was so process. It was like jaw dropping when Berens taught me that. I thought, oh my God, I am. She's right.
Really. So what does that look like for you then, Carol? The process for you?
Well, think about it. I'm a really, really hardcore get things going. So the process for me is reaching out and engaging to people in the right way, and then running things in the room in such a way that people feel engaged and accepted and brought in. And I want to hear their ideas, because that's a way to get people to buy in, is if you make part of the definition clearly shows part of their input. So my process, and I think that's part of the reason I didn't realize I was process oriented. But think about it, that's all about process. But to me, it was just the way I was with people. So I didn't see that as a process. Now look at chart the course. That's really freaking obvious that's process, right? But Berens had to help me see that my get things going way of engaging people was a process. It wasn't an engineering process. It was a how to engage other people process. Was that? Thank you, Ben, for asking that question, because I hadn't really thought about that way before.
Do you think it's like very much a natural thing? And I think also, say, with two of the types of this style of the abstract persuasion, shall we say, the intuitive ones, they're going to like just the collaborative effort of sharing the ideas. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, and that's a real turnoff for somebody who wants to be more concrete and directive. Okay, Ben, we're going to get there. Let me give everybody a chance. We really are going there, exactly where Ben's talking now. But let me give folks a chance if you would like to. Thank you, Emily, for sharing that. Anybody else, Ben or Santa, either one of you want to contribute about your use of other styles or your natural style? I would like to give you a chance before I move on.
Well, I think I spend most of my time, or have spent most of my life, in the what's it called? The behind the scenes one.
Okay, right.
Oh.
And I've just kind of been undergoing some kind of a change, so that now, even though I still spend a lot of time there, I will occasionally just pop out for the other one.
Chart the course.
Not the course, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I think both.
Mhm.
I don't know which one of them is more natural, or if there is any difference. It could be just that it's very situational.
Oh, well said, Santa. Ben, I'll let me speak to that. Santa, that's very well said. One of the mistakes people make is they just stick with their favorite style no matter what they're doing, and I can tell you firsthand that can really get you in hot water. It's done me. But yes, as well-functioning adults, I think without ever being taught any of this, we find our way to doing some things, kinds of things one way, and some things another way. And they just work better that way. And we ferret that out unconsciously instead of consciously. And that's appropriate as a well-functioning adult to be using different styles based on which activity you're doing. That's very well said. Thank you very much for that. Ben, your turn. By the way, guys, what I'm doing here is I've got a cat taking a bath right behind the screen. So Pumpkin is a big hit on Facebook. So every now and then, so I'm going to post a picture, if y'all don't mind, later today on Facebook about Pumpkin having attended the webinar.
Okay, excellent. So what we got here is, so Sana, in your tri-type in Enneagram, is there a 9 in there?
Yeah.
Right, so what you've got here, Carol, you've got Sana here. She's got a 6 and a 9 in her tri-type.
And a 4.
And a 4. But particularly the 6 and the 9 part, they're very accommodating. And so somebody can be accommodating maybe for different reasons.
Oh, absolutely. Well said.
Than their sort of like their Jungian type associated interaction style.
Well, Ben, if I can add that, yes, someone might be accommodating out of a belief in that's their value system, that's the way you treat people, and someone might be accommodating, just 2 examples, out of they don't want to they avoiding conflict, or it may be, you know what, they just don't, this isn't important enough to raise up my energy and cause a fuss over, so I'll just go along because it's really okay, doesn't matter if I go along.
Part of it is because, I mean, like the E6 wants, and it's a bit of a digression, folks, but E6 wants the support and guidance. So as those people are like so focused on support and guidance, they're going to be a little bit of extra accommodating, maybe if they don't even agree with it, but they want the support and guidance so much. And then also like the 9 that's afraid of loss and separation.
Ben, I'm sorry, what is the number you're saying before 6? It sounded like you said E6 to me.
Yeah, E6. Yeah, I call it Enneagram type 6, E6.
Oh, sorry, got it. I'm on board, sorry.
Right. So it's like they want that support and guidance from others, and a lot of them can be SJs, or I mean, resemble SJs. And so you can have someone and so you get to this point, once you know Enneagram as well, it's like you can then look very carefully for some of these like Enneagram styles, like someone who might naturally be on closer inspection, you can see how they chart the course. Mm-hmm. But maybe sort of but like if they're E9 or E6, that might sort of like tone it down a little bit and maybe appear a little bit more behind the scenes. Actually,
Ben, I've got a theory now, and it's just a theory, guys, because I'm brand new. I'm studying weekly. I go to a class taught by Catherine Faver on Enneagram, and this is a whole new universe for me. I'm fascinated. And one of my current theories I'm testing out is, do perhaps people with the same psychological type preference show up differently because their Enneagram styles preferences are different? And does that make 2 people of the same Myers-Briggs type show up differently? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm fascinated that might be the 4th model I need to bring in to help me understand the differences in people. Thank you for adding that, Ben.
We could bring in Jonathan here. What do you think of that, what she just said there, Jonathan?
Now, Ben, I promised Jonathan I would not bother him.
Okay.
Speak up if he wanted to. I would not invade him. I'm trying to be
sorry.
conscious here.
I was actually on the phone right there, so I did not hear anything.
So Jonathan is multitasking. We were talking about if someone had the same Myers-Briggs preference but different Enneagram preferences, that might be one way that different people with the same Myers-Briggs type show up differently because they actually have different Enneagram preferences. Would you like to weigh in, Jonathan?
Yes, I agree.
There you go. Oh, I love that. Because that's just my current theory.
And for more, watch the Hangout, so the Zoom event with Catherine Farver on August 3rd, when this will be the whole topic of that event.
Let's advertise that. Catherine's wonderful learning. So the last section we're going to, well, actually two more. This one, and then we're going to talk about how the models work together. But other useful information, we're not going to delve into these, but I want you to know this is part of Linda's material, and getting the book or doing a class, or God, I would hope you get to study with Linda at some time. So, for example, decision making. Each of these styles makes a different kind of decision. We don't have time to go into this today, but imagine how this can be difficult in a room when people have very natural different ways of wanting to go about making a decision. That can cause some of that confusion in a room. The communication styles. I do a very big exercise with this, teaching people the difference between responding language, directing language, and informing language. This can be a great problem with clarity, and also can be offensive. The directing language is necessary for clarity, but oh my, it implies one up, one down, and if done heavy-handedly, can really turn off the more informing style person. That said, the informing style can be so informing instead of directive that they're not giving people enough clarity in direction. If I can give a example of this here from my real life, I was working with a newly formed division, and the assistant actually one of his managers of the director brought me in and said, "Please help us, Carol. I'm head of the communications team, and we're sending out these messages, and the director actually needs us to gather this information for him. And we can't get people to reply to our emails, and he needs this information in his decision-making process, but we can't get it." And I don't actually like to teach things just conceptually. I like to make it real for people. So I said, I will do this with you. I won't teach a general communications workshop, but if you will each submit to me 2 emails you've written that did not get the result you needed from people, then I will write a course based on your input. Guys, it worked fabulously. I had 8 different emails because there were 4 of them, and I was able to determine that one of the 2 main reasons they weren't getting response, and one of them was they were all so informing in their language. The people getting their emails did not have a freaking clue what they expected them to do. They didn't know why they were reading this, so nobody was even finished. And then the other thing was they were bearing the headline. They're bearing the lead. Excuse me, the phrase is bearing the lead. So I taught them how to do the big picture executive summary up top, and then we actually labeled a section, all the gory details for people who want to read more, but we got the whiff-em, why you are reading this, and then I taught them how to use directing language. And this is before, this is before I learned interaction styles. It was just incredible how successful it was, and how great to get to use a real world example with those folks and not just teach conceptual. This is a business environment, and they were actually unable to get people to respond because they weren't being directing enough in what they wanted. Real world example of something that was failing in a corporation.
I think I heard, was Jonathan about to speak? I
got to scroll. I can't see Jonathan.
I think I heard his microphone come on momentarily.
Go ahead, Jonathan. Would you like to contribute now?
Ben seeing things.
Okay.
Sorry.
I've not got the ESP, because usually I have a sense that, because Jonathan usually makes a little sound just when he wants to speak. He'll go something like, I do it a little bit as well, and so I just thought that was what I heard.
Very cool.
But no.
Actually, I've fixed it now. Now that I've gotten me off the screen, I can see all 4 of you. So my apologies. I'll try to be aware, Jonathan. So that's and again, this book is worth it for the by the way, I get no money for saying this, okay?
You should do.
Because I believe.
Just like me with Dario in 8 Keys.
Oh, exactly, right. We don't get money for this. Serious, and actually, according to Ben, I've got to fix this. It's page 39, not page 37. But if that's all you use this book for, was the page where she does a page 8.5 by 11 size table, where she has a column for each style, and then the rows are what the pieces of the interaction are, the opening, the closing, and all the things you do in the middle. I will tell this story. I had a client who's, now we know what they are, behind the scenes. He does video production and editing, and he plans video things for companies that aren't big enough to have their own video department. He comes on board, and he's a marketing guy and a visual guy, and he does amazing work. He took this course from me at Wake Tech, and he had a meeting that Friday with a clearly in charge, he recognized client, CEO. And what he had planned to do was go through all the gory details and explain the complexity of all the things he had to weigh and handle, and just, impress her. I've been shaking his head already. And impress her with how complex this decision was, so she would know why she was paying him, because that's why she really needed him. And then when I explained about in charge and, be brief, be bright, or be gone, that they just want the executive summary. Now, if they ask questions, you better have the supporting data. But don't go in and lead with the data for an in-charge person. Go in and lead with what's important about this. And he realized, thank goodness, before the meeting, he thought, oh my God, she's going to be so confused. She's going to go, why is he going on about this? Is he trying to get me to help him make these decisions? What is happening here? So she called on Friday, and she said, so how things going? He said, great, got the design done, got all the dates set up, and we're right on target for delivering by the end of the month. She said, great, have a fantastic weekend, good to talk to you, and she hung up the phone.
Yeah.
Because that's all she needed to know. We're on target, we got the things done, and he said, Carol, had it not been for you, I might have totally blown the relationship with that client, because she did not, he said, you taught me. I was trying to talk to her as though I were talking to myself, and she was different from me, and I needed to flex to be successful with her. Ben, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, it's almost as if, I think a way to understand the in-charge interaction style people is to think that for them, it's almost as if the way they perceive time is as if they have a lot less time to do something than everybody else. It's like everything is like such a rush. It's like they must feel the pressure of time to get as much done in that shorter period as possible. So it's like they give that impression of being hurried and giving everybody else the hurry up as well, maybe.
I have never heard it said that way before, Ben. That's very good. Anybody I'm about to move to the final topics. Anybody want to register anything here before we move? Okay. Let me ask this one question. Ben, as someone with acknowledging behind the scenes preferences, does that story make sense to you? His story.
Oh yes, it's like you got to know that there's people like that, so that you can say, okay, that's just them. They're just not being rude. They're just...
Well said. There was nothing rude about her. She just needed to know that he had things under control and they were on target. That's all she needed to know. And think about it. That's her having a lot of confidence in him, and she just needed to know. It's not rude. It's just that's all she needed to know. So the last piece, and bless his heart, this is the piece Ben has been trying to get us to since the first 5 minutes. So I have this table in your handout because I thought it would be useful. First of all, we're going to look at the borders, and Berens, as Berens explains, this is how it breaks down into the interaction styles, is whether it's directing language and informing language. You see that at the top and on the left side, whether they responding or initiating. And those don't respond completely to introverted and extroverted. For the most part, it works pretty well to think of responding as someone with a more introverted preference and initiating as the more extroverted preference and energy. And you see the four styles, and what I've done is I'm showing you, as Berens taught me, what are the patterns. how she went about seeing the correlation between this and type. For example, ISTJ, which are the introverted sensing analyticals, both fall into chart the course. And on the other hand, once you get to the intuiting preference, notice the pattern changes. The pattern changes, the pattern goes to whether J or P. It's not the same for the other two temperaments. For example, stabilizer guardian, what's that last letter? IST?
J.
Absolutely. And improviser artisan here?
P.
There you go. Again, the first word is Berens. The second word is Keirsey's. I provide them both in case you're more familiar with Keirsey's words. Berens studied under Keirsey. He was on her dissertation committee. She actually used his words for years, and then she realized out in the consulting world, you know what? These words, she was in California doing consulting with corporations.
Yeah, that's the thing, California.
Yeah. And she realized, everybody wanted to be a rational. Nobody wanted to be a guardian. Nobody, for God's sakes, wanted to be an artisan. And who wanted to be called an idealist? That's not a good business thing to be. So the words were actually, the names of the temperaments were actually getting in the way of her helping people validate what was their true preference. So she played with it, and played's not the right verb. She experimented with it, and she ended up using the words that people responded most accurately and naturally to. Now, I was not convinced about changing rational to theorist. That did not land for me. So the first 3 times I taught this class, I did a poll, and I asked the people who self-identified as having a theorist preference. I asked them which word they prefer. This was in the temperament class. Asked them which word they preferred, and after 3 classes, I want you to know that the NTs, 100% of the time they voted, theorist, not theorist. That works for me. 100% of the time. After 3 classes, I quit struggling with it. I accepted it. And I confessed this to Linda, and she laughed, and she said, Carol, the reason it works is it's not that they're all theoretical physicists. It's that if intuiting and thinking are your core preferences, then you do inside your head, you have a theoretical framework you're acting within. So it doesn't mean you do theory as a job, but that's just how you're structured. You want to know the big picture, and then you make the details make sense within the big picture, but you have to have a theoretical framework in order to move and even think about it. And that makes so much sense to me. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks. I like in this manner of your, Carol, like letting me get in there, and I'll learn not to interrupt. It's just that what you're saying now. What's interesting now, when you're talking about the woman with an in-charge interaction style, so you could have a situation where you got an ENTJ. Where
that's what and that's probably what she was, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but if they're in this from this person who's interacting, say their INTP preferences, and they're interacting with this person, and they're thinking, they don't want to hear the theory behind it. That person might think, based on their interaction style, they're not interested in the theory. So you can have someone who's very theoretical on the inside. It's just almost as if from the external behavior, it looks like, they're not interested in theory. They are interested in theory, but it's in a very specialized situation, maybe when they want to solve a problem. And that's why you said that thing of, you better have that information when they then ask you a question. And then their theoretical side will come through a bit more.
Well, you've got me. Well, they'll extrovert it.
Yeah.
And what you've got me thinking is, as long as when you're saying what you're saying, the theoretical framework in their head that makes sense to them, they probably don't ask you any more questions because the framework works. It's when what you're saying, the framework's not working, that they probably go. But think about it. They're being they're pragmatist, and they're focused on getting it done. So I imagine their questions being directive and pragmatic probably don't sound theoretical in nature to the other person. They sound very focused on getting things done, but they may actually be questions that are helping them get that framework in their head, so what you're doing makes sense to them, so now they can trust you can really do it, and this is in hand. So thanks for that, Ben. I hadn't thought that through before.
there's a way Keirsey talks about this. Like I said, in his book, it's a very INTP book. It's a tricky book, but if you're prepared to put the work in, Personality is a very good book. It's the last book he wrote. It was published 3 years before he died. In
Personology?
Yeah, Personology.
Right.
And he would say things like, now this is particularly when they're thinking about the way they enact their role as a career, that he would say that the directive types are enterprising and they're looking for options, but options in order to advance towards a goal. And he would say that, and he called the responding types, not responding like this, but what's it called? It's the accommodate, not the, what is it? Informing types. He called the informing types, he called that reactive inquiry. He called it proactive enterprise and reactive inquiry. And he says their search was for information.
Yeah.
And so maybe with the other type, with the NTPs, they're more likely to discuss their ideas and maybe show their intellect on their sleeves. Whereas the NTJs are not necessarily interested in doing all the talk. They want to apply it and get things achieved.
And and there I have to go to 8 function theory, Ben, and there I'm hearing a difference between introverted thinking and extroverted thinking.
Yeah.
ENTJ, extroverted thinking is all about achieving the goal and being very goal directive, whereas introverted thinking is analyzing to understand, and extroverted thinking is analyzing to execute.
And also they might think that, I think with the NTPs, they think, well, to be honest, they think they can impress people with their mind and what they talk about and their ideas. And maybe the NTJs, especially ENTJs, think about, no, we impress people by what we get done.
Oh, I like that. I like that, because they certainly are focused on what we get done.
Yeah. And they can be very concerned about how they appear to others, but I think maybe it's how they judge others is, can you get it done? Can you get it achieved?
Right.
Because they themselves won't value people who can just talk theory.
Oh yeah, because if you're directive in nature, there has to be some getting it done at some point.
Yeah.
So guys, this is the end of the presentation, and my sharing this with you. I think more of sharing it with you than presentation, actually. I did want you to see there's a whole lot. This is a day-long enterprise, and I did want you to see, I didn't want to just try to jam in 6 hours into 2, but I wanted to give you a flavor how much more there is to it than just what we covered today. And if you could I'm interested in whatever you have to say. I hope this was useful to you. If you want to share anything about, will help my learning to know what was useful to you in this, because my whole goal is to, as having ENFP preferences, frankly, I'm satisfied by being fascinated, okay? Let's just put that out all on the table. If I'm fascinated, I'm happy. But I have learned in the real world, you really want to help people with useful things. So I'm hoping, even though I find it fascinating, that there was something useful here. So anything anybody would like to share in closing, realizations you had, what was useful, I'm open.
I don't know. I hadn't really thought side by side that I'm the behind the scenes person, but I'm jumping ahead to this and bypassing not so much the goal setting one, but the getting things going.
Get things going, right?
Get things going.
Yeah.
I need to work on that. When I am working with people.
Emily, thank you for sharing that. Wonderful realization. Trust me, there are things we all need to work on, and I get that I need to work on some things too, but well said. Actually, I'm kind of the opposite in you in that regard. I have to reel in. I'm so get things going, I have to reel in my get things goingness sometimes rather than do it more. Thank you very much. Anyone else? What was useful?
I've got something to ask about the different kinds within the behind the scenes style. If anybody else has got, Santa, have you got a question?
No.
Okay, I'll ask this then.
Wait, Ben, let's give Santa a chance to also. Santa, was anything stand out as useful to you that was helpful in this today?
Well, it's interesting. Also, it's interesting that this system again puts me kind of. I resonate with both the INFP and the INFJ styles, which keeps happening to me. So.
And that's perfectly valid. And I'm wondering, I'd be interested if on your the MBTI results, if you had a slight preference for J or P, that would totally, not that that would validate you, that would just, if you answered the instrument that way, that would reflect back absolutely that what you're answering shows you are in the middle on judging and perceiving preference. So it makes total sense.
In MBTI, I'm definitely INFP function-wise, and then in Keirsey, I'm INFJ. So
Yeah, I went through the what we did, Carol, is I went through the healer idealist profile with her, and then also the counselor idealist profile.
That is very cool, Santa. I'm ceased to be amazed when people have a foot in both worlds, and it happened. It was I'll just share this one short story. The software team, and I was teaching temperament, and I had a flip chart for each of the 4 temperaments, and then I said, and if you resonate with 2 of these, tell me what that is, and I'll create a group for you. And out of like 36 people in the room, more like 24 people in the room, 6 of them said, don't make me choose. I'm just as much stabilizer as I'm theorist. So I created a chart for stabilizer theorist. And it was just and I looked at their MBTIs, and they were borderline on SNN. It just perfectly matched what they were experiencing as which temperament they were drawn to, and it was ISTJ and INTJ. They were borderline on SNN, so it made total sense in their score. Made total sense that they would feel drawn to stabilizer, and they'd feel drawn to theorist, and letting them work in. And when we looked at their answers, I let the after they give an answer to some of the questions, I would ask the room, okay, what do you hear there, stabilizer or theorist? And we were proving in the room their answers were a beautiful blend of both stabilizer perspective and theorist. So thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else want to?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Now.
Yeah, I have a bit to ask about the behind the scenes in the integrator,
Okay.
and then also I can go over sort of like how these show differently with the influence of temperament on it. So I'm just writing them down. ISF.
Think about it. Think how differently an ISFJ presents to INTP, and yet when we go to this particular pattern of wanting to integrate information and doing things behind the scene, they have something in common. But looking at them as people, you can imagine they're very different people, but isn't that cool that beneath that difference, they both share this way of going about things and interacting with people?
Yeah,
Can I just say something here?
Please,
yeah,
hey, Laura.
I've had people type me as INTP, but then I've had other people tell me I'm ISFJ, and other people tell me that I'm INFP, and you're saying that the INTP and the ISFJ look like very different people, but I read both of those profiles, and I relate a lot to both of them. So how do you?
Well,
is it the common interaction style that they have, or is it just me? And I find that with temperaments too, like I can kind of see myself in all of the temperaments, except for maybe the artisan. I'm not very much like an artisan, right. But I relate a lot to the theorist, like wanting the mastery, wanting the competence, wanting to understand things. Right. I relate a lot to the guardian, I want security and stability. Maybe some of that kind of goes along with my Enneagram type 6, and then I relate to like the humanist ideals of the idealist temperament. So right. I mean. Well, I feel like I don't neatly fit one type.
And that's
I know Ben and I have talked about that. So
okay, that's perfectly fine that you don't. And several things I have to say. One is no one should have ever told you you're a particular thing or the other. Their job is to explain information and let you self-identify. The other thing I'd like to say is when I said they look like very different people, someone with very clear preferences for ISFJ can come across as a very different person in your experience with them than someone with clear INTP or INF or even INFP preferences, and certainly than ISFP. But the more, like it sounds like to me, you've got more than one of the poles in the psychological type that you probably have a slight preference. So you really do have a foot in multiple worlds, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is, I have seen that over and over again, that when people felt pulled between two different temperaments, it correlated exactly with the pole that they had a slight preference in the MBTI score. So I don't think there's anything in any way wrong about that. I think you have slight preference in a couple of places. So
well, I mean on MBTI tests, like typically like on the TF scales and then the JP scales, I'll often report slight preferences on one side and another, and I keep wobbling back and forth.
Yeah.
The only thing, like scoring as an introvert and an intuitive is usually I get pretty strong scores on both of those. But then I have people telling me that I'm kind of like an SJ. So even though I get strong intuitive scores on tests, I still can relate quite a bit to what's said about the SJ. Now, not everything. Mostly like the security and stability part and wanting to belong. I don't relate so much to the being tied down to traditions and resistance to change. That part I don't relate to so much, but that other stuff, yes. So
I'll just say one thing about there was for me a key decision point between what the best category for Laura is when she talked about doing things in a particular way when it's around other people, but when she's on her own, she wants to do it her own way. And that is what made me think, oh, INTP E6. Because if someone was a guardian, they would want to pretty much do it the right way, even when they were on their own.
So, Laura, I'm to agree with Ben here. I'm thinking there's multiple things going on. One is you have slight preference, like you said on T and F, for example, maybe J and P, you have a slight preference. So that would make you feel like you had a foot in multiple worlds.
Yeah,
and I do think, and thanks to Ben and Jonathan, I've been ushered into the Enneagram learning world. I believe our Enneagram, defense mechanisms has a role to play here. And I think that can make people who share the same Myers-Briggs type show up differently because their Enneagram preferences are pulling them in different directions. So there's nothing strange about what you said. I do want to be careful about languaging, and it's an instrument, not a test. A test has right and wrong instruments. An instrument is simply measuring things, and what literally the MBTI is measuring is how clearly, not anything about strength, but how clearly you expressed on the day that you took it what your preferences are. That is scientifically what's going on. It's measuring how clearly that day you took it what your preferences are. And you're the one who gets to
preferences, though, aren't what you really do in reality. Like if I had things my way, I'd be a more outgoing, extroverted person. I mean, that's one example. And maybe it's just because society seems to reward that more. And I mean, there's some things I like about being introverted, but I kind of do wish I was a little more extroverted if I could completely choose. And I kind of wonder about the intuition too, if I get a strong score on the test, because I prefer to be that way. Given the choice, I would rather be that way. But then sometimes I feel like, well, I don't know, am I really that ingenious or imaginative? Probably not, but I certainly value it. So,
So there again, when we're taking the instrument, sometimes we're expressing what we value as opposed to maybe what our core preference is. So there's I love the fact that we're discussing there are all these different influences on it, and it's just about clarity, and it makes perfect sense that you've got slight preferences and you feel drawn to multiple worlds here.
Yeah.
So I need to honor people's time, and oh my gosh, I haven't honored people's time. I've gone over 8 minutes. I so apologize. I need to I need to
Well,
do a wrap here, Ben.
well, I think we can go on a little. I mean, we can go on a little bit. I think. I mean, we can ask them.
Not here.
Yeah, she just got here, so Laura's happy to go on, and if people really are pressed for time, they can leave.
Yeah.
But there's just a little bit that.
Well, actually, we have gotten to a place where we do need to honor Emily, Santa. You've been here the whole time. You're welcome to stay. If you need to leave, just let me know. But thank you so much. Y'all showed up and y'all contributed, and I really appreciated having you here. So thanks for being here, and stay or go, whatever you want to do now. But thank you for being here.
Well, and thank you, Carol, for the extension, because I was wondering about things like, so when it said down about the behind the scenes and the wanting to integrate things, I can see that works brilliantly for INTP.
Absolutely.
And I've been thinking recently, because I've been reading books on songwriting and looking particularly at the man, Pat Patterson, and the way he talks about songs really need to be well integrated, and he always talks about that word prosody and things fitting together.
I'm sorry, what was that word, Ben?
Prosody.
I don't know that word.
It's about the music has to perfectly match the lyrics,
okay,
and the effect that you're going for in terms of the rhyme types versus stability, instability, all of the ideas sort of balancing each other. And so it's like going through everything, supporting everything else. So you can see how it's really well integrated. And so, for example, if you have an unstable idea, you might want to use an uneven number of lines, or lines of an uneven length, or rhyme types which are more remote. So like a consonance rhyme or an assonance rhyme, whereas the perfect rhyme feels more stable.
Okay, and you were connecting this to behind the scenes, I think, somehow.
Yeah, because ISF, because it was said that all of the behind the scene ones are about integrating. So I can see how the composer, the ISFP composer, does that in their writing. Like, because it's still, and Keirsey would say, well, I mean, ISFP is the closest type to INTP outside of the NT temperament, because it's the same interaction style behind the scenes, and also it's adaptive. The SPs are adaptive like the NTs. And so you've got designing structures for INTP, and you've got composing stories. And there's also quite a bit of design going involved for, the composer.
Okay.
And so when someone...
And Keirsey's words are that stabilizers and catalyst are both the cooperative types, and artists, I'm trying to stick with one nomenclature here, and improvisers and theorists are the pragmatist. So they would be flexing because it was pragmatic and it made things work, whether artistically or theoretically, it made things work to flex. Okay.
Yeah, and in personology, you would say things like adapt to circumstances for the NTs and SPs, and comply with circumstances for the SJs and NFs. Right. Now, of course, the compliance is different between NFs and SJs.
NFs aren't really good with complying, dear.
Well, they sort of like, they want other people to sort of get with the program and the movement. So it's a different kind of compliance.
I say that a bit of tongue in cheek. It's about if you value that this working things out together, but it goes along with what they value. I would like to speak to the ISFJ. I have a couple of ISFJ friends, one in particular who works for the EPA. And I would not have thought before Linda taught me this that ISFJ, I mean, I get the behind the scenes, definitely, that's a behind the scenes style that she shows. But if I didn't know her as well as I did and have her down through the years talk to me about what she does, I wouldn't get what an integrator ISFJ preference was. That I don't think that's immediately apparent. But having talked to her about all the things she takes into account and trying to make it work with the rules and make it work for people and get this thing done on the timeline, she's integrating. I think it's a more concrete integrating and a less theoretical integrating than maybe theorists and catalysts are doing. But thanks to Berens, I can see that Stabilizer Guardian, she is getting integrating done under the covers, and I would never have seen that before. I would have just seen her temperament before I was taught this. that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can go a little bit more into that. I'll just say that I think with the INFP, they're integrating their values and measuring everything against their set of values to see if it's in harmony with that. I think though, because we've got Laura here, I think she's still here, we can really drill down on that ISFJ integrating thing to see how much of Laura resembles that pattern versus the INTP pattern.
Well, now Laura did say she didn't really feel she resonated with the rules and regs kind of part. And my kind of stake in the sand about stabilizer guardian is if you need the structure and the organization and the safety of those rules and regs, and we got a framework here and we operate within that, and those rules and regs are important. That's to me the cornerstone of a firm foot in stabilizer guardian.
Well, I resonate with the safety aspect of it. Like if I know that the rules are going to make things safe and avoid trouble, then yes, I will generally agree with them. I guess what I don't agree with so much is the rules for the sake of the rules.
Yeah, and that's not stabilizing.
Kind of like the we've always done it this way mentality.
Yeah,
so this is the right way, and we're close to other ways, and it's a rigid bureaucracy, and it's more rigid than it's got to be. So that, and maybe it's because I read the SJ profiles and they seem like so orthodox and so uptight, and whereas for me, I just kind of want more. Maybe this is Enneagram 6 again, but it's the security and stability part of it that I most resonate with.
Yeah, and thank you. I think that was very insightful.
And the wanting to belong, that too,
Well, and that can come from a feeling preference, by the way, the wanting to belong.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing stabilizer here. Jonathan, I want to ask you here. Say more about 6, but am I hearing self-pres in the concern for safety, or are we hearing 6 in the concern for safety?
Well, I'm kind of between. I mean, on instincts, I'm still trying to sort it out.
Right.
I talked with Catherine Favre. I did an interview with her, and she said it was social first, self-pres second. But I'm kind of wondering. But then I read like the 6 descriptions, and I thought it resonated a little bit more with self-pres 6 than social 6. So maybe the order is switched. I did not relate much to the sexual 6.
Interesting. Jonathan, do you want to weigh in on anything you're hearing here?
Well, all 6s will be concerned with safety, so that won't. No matter what, self-pres is generally concerned with safety as well. So, so that's not good to. Based on everything she's saying, could be either self-pres or 6. It's mostly 6 though. As for whether being your social or self-pres, that's probably better for another time to discuss. But,
Okay, thank you. So Laura, thank you. This is fascinating. This is you're a great example here of I think we're feeling the bleed through of the Enneagram, because I'm not hearing classic stabilizer from what you're saying, and I'm thinking we've got the Enneagram is bleeding through, and that's picking up pieces of the stabilizer, but otherwise I don't hear classic stabilizer from you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Like I totally. I mean, this is the 6th doubt, but I'm not sure I totally fit like theorist either, or catalyst. I mean, because even with the theorist temperament, I mean, I can see how a lot of it fits, but then all this stuff about the cold logic and not considering the people, and that part of it I don't relate to.
Right. Well, and I would like to say that I have known people with NT preferences who did have a quiet warmth about them. So it probably a little unfair to just associate the cold with it. I certainly have experienced that with it, but I've been astonished with some ENTJs and INTPs who, underneath that NT thing going on, had there was a real warmth there that was actually delightful to find when you got in touch with it.
Yeah, because I think it was Ben or somebody else I was talking to, but like the theories and stuff that I'm interested in, virtually all of them have a human component way. If it's just like really cold facts or cold science, and I can't relate to it personally, or it doesn't really relate much to humanity, I'm probably not going to be that interested. And I think that's why I like typology theory so much, is because I can really relate to this personally. I can compare myself to other people, and it's very much about humanity. And
I can give you some INTPs though who are interested in humanity, like Linda Berens and David Keirsey.
Oh yeah,
There you go. Well said.
Yeah, but I mean, I see some of these INTPs, and they're reading like these treatises on formal logic and stuff, and it's so dry to me, and I can't get through it. And I mean, even though I'm logical my own way, I'm not logical in the formal logic way. Like I go on Personality Cafe and I read these INTPs arguing back and forth, and it's just like, okay, what does that fallacy mean? What does this fallacy mean? I just kind of get lost, and it's like too dry, too technical,
You're a bit like that as well, though. I mean, the most
I'm
technical.
like that.
Yeah. Oh, go on, Emily. You'll be a good example. So if you talk.
So I used to think I was an ENFP until fairly recently, and I asked the opinion of a lot of other people, and yeah, I get called cold. I'm too cold to be, like, in relationships. I'll think I'm being warm and friendly and I'm doing the right thing, but I'm doing the logical thing, and all my behavior all falls completely in line with that of the INTP. I'm not an ENFP. My mother was an ENFP, so maybe that rubbed off on the way I present myself sometimes. I use her as a social mask, but that's not me. That isn't me.
And Emily, thank you for sharing that. And that's a good example of the developed self. For example, all the chart the course in my childhood, I think, made me much more comfortable doing chart the course things and stepping over into in charge. So yes, wouldn't your mother's behavior have some kind of impact and there be some bleed through?
And I think that happened to me too quite a bit.
Oh, that's Laura. Okay.
The influence from my parents, because I was always encouraged to, you got to follow the rules, you got to do the right thing, and to be too individualistic, too different, too non-conforming, that was not encouraged. Right. And it's important to fit in. It's important to be nice to people, and because I kind of thought, as a tool for kind of figuring out the type, what was I really like as a child, and in some ways I was, very, very much like an INTP, because sometimes I would be fair to a fault, like okay, we got to be fair for everybody, and if I make an exception for this person, I got to make an exception for that person. And now I've kind of learned to flex that a little bit more, and I'm a little more comfortable making like special exceptions for people. But I think when I was younger, it was like I wasn't so much that way, and sometimes I would just speak my mind more, and sometimes some of the things I could say were kind of rude and tactless, and people would not see me that way now. I mean, well, you're very tactful, you're very considerate, and it's also family influence too, because I was always encouraged, to be that way, to be very tactful and not to hurt people, and so some of that may have been my upbringing. But then in other odd ways, I was not very much like a theorist, because I seem to need more structure than they did. Like when I was doing an assignment, I needed things to be clear cut, because I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to, have the unpleasant surprise of getting a bad grade. So I was always a student that, when we were assigned a paper, I'd always ask, okay, how many pages does it have to be? Things like that, because, or even when reading stories and stuff, sometimes I couldn't always read between the lines like the underlying intentions of the characters. I needed to have that explicitly spelled out to me. So in some ways I wasn't very much like an intuitive, you know, because I needed things more explicit. It's almost like I had Asperger's syndrome in a way, because of the odd way my brain worked, and then, you know, trying to relate to other people. It's kind of like I wanted to have friends and I wanted to fit in, but I didn't always go about it in the right way or the best way. So,
Laura, are you from the Midwest?
yes.
Well, you know, I'm just reflecting what some of the things I could be hearing. I could be hearing a young INTP who would say things just, you know, this is what it is, and that be, oh, that's not going over well. And then we talked earlier about your core self, your genetic preferences, and then your developed self. And so for me, it's the Southern polite thing I was trained in.
Yeah.
You were trained in Midwestern niceness, which is a little different, but a lot like Southern politeness. So you and I both have a cultural overlay. So I can imagine maybe INTP with a Midwestern social overlay. And then we've got the you did say it was fear. You wanted to get it right, so you wanted clarity, so you didn't do it wrong. So I'm hearing the 6, the Enneagram 6 in there. That's a defense, yeah. Because
I read about other INTPs, and they're not like that at all. They're like, I hate rules. I hate them all, you know. And I like to have some, you know, some rules. I don't like it to be, but then also I get overwhelmed when there's too many of them, because then I know you're going to do something wrong.
Right. Laura, I worked with someone for years who I really believed was some form of STJ when I worked with her. And then we did the Myers-Briggs as the whole department, and she validated as ENTP preferences, and she was very clear about that. And I was thinking, oh my word, I don't pick up ENTP from her. Well, she was from the Midwest, and she had came from a German family, just like one generation removed. Now think about German culture is pretty freaking STJ.
Yeah.
And I realized she was presenting from her culture and her upbringing, Germanic family in the Midwest, and then, but underneath the covers, what she had going on was ENTP. So I got it, how that, and Linda said, see the core self, and there's the developed self, but that line right around the core self, the thing that gets laid on first, is the culture as expressed by your family. So you're giving us a perfect example of somebody who's experiencing the Enneagram, the type preference in your developed self from the family.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I mean, Laura's in Minnesota, I believe, and she knows Alina.
Right. Yeah.
And Alina is like pretty darn sure that you're, you know, logical, intuitive, introvert, or INTP.
Well, in socionics, she doesn't really deal with the MBTI that much.
Yeah. But she's how sure is she, Laura? I mean, would she be like willing to like go up in court and like put her hand up and say, "Oh, I'm pretty darn sure"?
Maybe not quite at that level, but maybe about 95% sure. I mean, I did a questionnaire, and you know, I typed up my answers, and I had her look at it, and she just quit about halfway through, because she's like, "This is clear cut LII. I don't go any farther."
I'm comfortable with the language of telling somebody, so what I'm hearing sounds like I'm very uncomfortable with the language of telling somebody, quote unquote, what they are. Because I'm so clearly trained not to do that. So the only thing that really matters is what Laura validates and feels like she resonates with. But thank you, Laura, for this example. This is a really cool example of the integration of these different perspectives and pieces. So Ben, I'm going to have to sail off here.
Okay.
And get something done about dinner.
Sure.
Right. So if you end the recording.
Okay.
Well, then maybe we can chat a little bit with you.
So thanks everyone for coming, and I absolutely enjoyed the conversation. I really appreciate how much everyone engaged. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
You had a practical example.